My name is Christrup Kjeldsen. I'm an associate professor at Aarhus University, also leading the National Center for School Research and currently chairing the IEA, which do these large-scale international comparative studies in schooling. But my main research interests have over years been in different types of inequalities in society, social justice, and in particular looking at upbringing and becoming citizens over a lifespan. So in that regard, parental leave policies is also a very interesting area to look into and to see which inequalities that might start already in the very early years. So let me start with a simple observation. Denmark is often presented as a kind of a model country, along with the other Nordic countries when it comes to parental leave. There is generous benefits, long leave periods, and high female labor market participation. So it's often referred these countries, the Nordic countries, as the social democratic welfare state regimes, if we are following Esbjørn Gustav Andersen's categories. But even though when we look closer and look at the empirical outcomes rather than just formal entitlements and policies, we see that parenting leave outcomes are highly unequal in different ways. These inequalities are not accidental. They are produced by a complex policy design, interacting with labor market structures, employment statuses, and education. In my presentation, and it's meant to be a brief presentation, but I will go over three things. First, I will briefly present the historical development of parental leave in Denmark. Then I will present and explain the current system and why it's, in my view, in my interpretation, it's a quite complex design. And then I will present how these things leads to different outcomes and actually also that the latest reform with effect from 2022 seems to have positive influences on a father's take up of parental leave. I can share all the sources and references for the presentation if on request. So, but let's see. Yes, parental leaves in Denmark and design elements. From a historical perspective, from the first legislation that had maternity leave as part of it was in 1901, and that was part of labor market protections. It was 4 weeks after birth, and this system mainly was addressing physical protection of female industrial workers. So it was mothers that were granted 4 weeks of leave after childbirth, and it was actually, it's interesting from a capability perspective or capability approach. It was not just a substantial freedom, but a demand. So they had to take these 4 weeks after birth, and if they wanted to shorten it, they had to have a sign from a doctor saying that it would not harm the mother nor the child to start before these 4 weeks after birth. Later on in 1913, maternity leave became linked to social insurance. We had some big social insurance reforms in Denmark at that time, and it was linked to that. So it became a kind of a social protection mechanism rather than only physical protection for industrial workers. In the 1960s and onwards, we saw the expansion of the welfare states and the welfare states' rights, and then the number of weeks raised to 14 weeks, and then in 1973, maternity leave became a universal right, because previously it was linked to either you were a wage earner or you were in the start part of the industrial workers. So from 1973, with further social reforms, it became established as a social right. So one could say that maternity leave began as a protection of mothers and children. It was not related to thoughts on gender equality policies, etc. It was clearly maternity leave. When we then look for 1980s and until 2021, and then we have the later development, which I will say a few words on. It was a policy that went from over family policy, labor market, and then turned into questions on gender equality. So that's kind of the big issues that was handled. So in 1984, parental leave was introduced, and so it was no longer only maternity leave. And later on, from 1977, there were some flexibility included in the paternity in the parental leave schemes. A year to look into was the earmarked or the restricted for fathers 2 weeks of restricted parental leave in 2002, and then it actually it went back and was not earmarked for some time. And then latest with the EU directive, the earmarked periods of parental leave was introduced again. So we have had a shift from family autonomy to labor market regulations and gender equality over the different policies in historical terms. So how is the system from 2022 and onwards? And then I will just give you some insights in the context of maternity, paternity, parental leave, and different categories related to labor market participation and statuses. So for when both caretakers, and actually that's an interesting thing, because in legislation there have been a shift on how you name the mother as the first primary caretaker, or in order to have an openness of different genders in the policies, but that has recently also changed. So, but for now, I just use the same naming, fathers, mothers, etc., that are presented in the labor market legislation and by the ministry. So just to make this clear. But for the mother, the birth giver, there is 4 weeks before the expected birth, and this can in some parts of the labor market, due to the Danish model of negotiation between the labor market parties, the unions, etc., might in some cases be longer, but negotiated. But at least 4 weeks before birth, the mother have maternity leave. Then afterwards, there are 2 restricted weeks for the mother and the second primary caretaker, the father, and that cannot be transferred in any way. So that's restricted. Then there is when both are wage earners, there is 13 weeks for each, which can be transferred to the other caretaker. And then at the end, there is 9 weeks restricted again for the mother and for the second primary caretaker, or the father, the paternity leave. So that is the scheme, so to speak, for paternity leave in cases of two wage earners. If you look at another situation, you might have that the mother is a wage earner and the father or the second primary caregiver is self-employed. In that case, it's the restricted 9 weeks suddenly changes. So in this case, the self-employed person in this setup has 22 weeks all in all, and they are transferable. And then there is the mother still have the 9 weeks restricted at the end. So you may say that the restricted part is being converted into transferable weeks in this case. In the other case where we have the father as or the second primary caregiver as the wage earner and the mother is the self-employed, then we find the opposite situation, so to speak, where it is transferable for the 22 weeks and the 9 weeks restricted is converted into transferable weeks. So in many ways, this is a way of taking into account that self-employed small business owners, etc., have another situation. They are given more freedom to place and transfer the parental leave weeks. Then we have this situation where you could say, okay, what in the case of both the father and the mother, or both primary caregivers are self-employed. In that case, there's still the 4 weeks of maternity leave before giving birth, and then the restricted 2 weeks for each. And then there is 22 weeks that is all transferable for both the maternity and the paternity part of the parental leave scheme. So that is the most flexible situation, one may say. So that's a very complex situation, and it regards on within families the way that it's negotiated, and latest from 2024 and onwards, there is also other opportunities to have a household with more caregivers actually, and a shared responsibility and transfers of weeks, which are it just gives more complexity in the scheme. But it's all in order to actually reflect on the different life situations of families, and also have a family understanding that goes beyond the more traditional one, and that is so to speak the arguments, policy arguments behind it. The question is, how does this actually turn into outcomes in take up of parental leaves? And this is some latest figures, and the source for these figures are Statistics Denmark. And if we look at it, we see that that the duration for leave for the fathers, in this case, it's as you saw early on, we did not have these earmarked 9 weeks restricted at the end, so that's more restriction for the wage earners situation. And as you can see, we had this shift in legislation in 2022, and so this is the changes over the years, and you can see that the days of the fathers taking a parental leave for the wage earners grew quite substantial in 2023, and this might be interpreted as a result of the new policy and the restricted earmarked not transferable weeks of parental leave. But we also see a raise in the self-employed, and actually you can also see over the between the two policies, the self-employed fathers had a lower number of days with take-up of parental leave also in recent years. So you may say that the figure look similar, but the self-employed have less take-up of leave than the wage earners. This is focusing on the fathers. We keep focusing a bit on the fathers and look at the number of days, the duration of leave over time. And remember, we had the legislation change in 2022. So if we look at it, the percentages of fathers only taking with non-take-up of parental leave have gone down in 2023 in comparison to the former policies where it was not earmarked in the same extent. We also see that there is a quite high change in the number of fathers having durations above 77 days in comparison to earlier periods. These are also figures from Statistics Denmark in a report they presented last year, but are under reconstructions due to new data coming in. If we look at I think that's in the perspective of inequalities in take-ups of parental leave. I think this is very interesting because this figure shows to what degree fathers that had with less than 2 weeks of leave. So now we kind of change perspective. So this is the percentages of fathers with less than or at most 2 weeks of leave divided by the number of employees at the workplace where he works. So as you can see, there is the reform of the policy with earmarked parental leave for the fathers had the effect of reducing the number of fathers having less than 14 days of leave. So in comparison to the former legislation in 2021. So, but we also see here, which I find very interesting, there seems to be a correlation between the number of employees at the workplace. So if you are working in a small workplace with less up to 15 employees, then the number of fathers only having 2 weeks of leave is the highest. So it can be one hypothetical interpretation, because that needs to be investigated further by research. But one interpretation is that it's more flexible to actually be replaced in the workforce at the workplace if there are higher numbers of employees. So this is one thing to take into account, and how these policies, are being, taken into how it influences take-ups, depending on the structures in the labor market. Another one which I find very interesting as well, and that is this is earlier data. So this is actually data from the previous on the previous policies. I do not at the moment have access to the data from the time with the new policies in place. But look at this. There seems to be a relationship between educational background and then the number of days you take up parental leave. So for children before birth, that's the blue bar. For those within the first year of the child's life, where you look at before birth, which is the maternity part, mothers in this case with no or below lower upper secondary below upper secondary education. That means in practice in Denmark, compulsory education until the 9th grade or below. They tend to have more before birth parental leave. This might, and we need to look into it, so it's a hypothesis, it might relate to the labor market negotiations and the labor market between the labor markets parties on the union side, that there are parts of the labor market where this is by negotiation part of labor market agreements. But then we see that there is changes, and if we look at all together, you know, the before birth and the after birth duration, actually the long tertiary education, they seem to have less take up of number of days, which is quite interesting in my view, from the perspective of inequalities related to parents' educational background. So that was some of the things I brought with me today, and I hope we can now have a discussion. I will close down the sharing of my PowerPoint, because then we can better see each other and have a discussion on these presentations.